Hey everyone, and welcome to the Cheyenne Hills Podcast, Verse by Verse. We know it's often hard to find time to spend studying God's Word, so we're happy you can join us as we read, unpack, and discuss Scripture every Tuesday and Thursday. We hope you enjoy the program.
Across the street and around the world, Cheyenne Hills.
Well, hello again, everybody, and welcome to the podcast. And we are plowing through Genesis. And I don't know, Genesis just keeps going on forever, guys. I mean, we
got to get to 52.
Well, I know it's going to take a while, but this whole, they call this the Jacob cycle. This is really about, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And this, we're in the middle of what is called the Jacob cycle. It's almost a contained part of Genesis. And really we were talking earlier, there's some things that we're going to unpack about this ancestry that makes the kind of clear why God wanted Abraham to leave his family. So we're going to start reading in verse 43. And this is Laban is Jacob's father-in-law. Jacob has taken two wives, Leah and Rachel, and is that right? Mm-hmm. And Laban is the father, and he's pursuing them and said, "Hey, you didn't even say goodbye, and by the way, you took one of my gods." So that's kind of where we're at. So in verse 43, it says, "Then Laban answered and said to Jacob, the daughters are my daughters, and the children are my children, and the flocks are my flocks, and all that you see is mine. But what can I do this day to these my daughters, or to their children whom they have borne? So now come, let us make a covenant, you and I, let be a witness between you and me." And so it's basically he's claiming all this is my stuff, but we're a long way from home, and I guess we better make a covenant, kind of a last ditch effort. Would you say?
Well, I was gonna say, it's so weird because it was a patriarchal society at that point, and so but the fact that they're married now would mean that they were quote unquote Jacob's, not Laban's anymore. So he's like really hurt still from that last little interaction, and he's like, "But these are my daughters." Yeah. And he's even calling their children his grandchildren. Well, these are my children. Yeah. Not Jacob's. He's like really hurt.
It's like his ego just won't let it go.
I think that's kind of what's implied here. So that's what I kind of wanted to stop and camp on that one. So now let's make a covenant between you and me, or something to be witnessed between you and me. And verse 45 says, "Then Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. And Jacob said to his kinsmen, 'Gather stones.' So they took stones and they made a heap, and they ate there by the heap. Now Laban called it, Jegar Sha'aduth, don't know. But Jacob called it Gilead." And so they basically mean the same thing. And we were talking about this heap. It just means a witness, right, between us. Let's pile of rocks up. What do we have anything that's even close to a similar thing as a witness between us?
Well, we kind of do. And I reference back to the now I can't think of the name of the hymn. "Oh, come thou fount." It says, "Oh, come thou fount, I raise my Ebenezer." I don't know if it's the same word here, but those stones of remembrance and those stones of boundaries to show. And at least where I'm from in Missouri, we would have, if there wasn't fences, they would put large piles of rocks on the corners of the properties before they could build them. And so you'd be like, "Oh wait, this is not my land. I didn't put this one up, so I know I'm entering into somebody else's territory." I mean, nowadays we have the purple paint for non-trespassing of saying you are somewhere else now. Don't do anything wrong.
No, but that's actually a really good parallel. I think it's the boundary stones. Is basically, let us make this, because that's what it was. It's kind of on the boundary lands of Laban, and now Jacob going back to his land. So that's a really good parallel. I didn't want to cut you off. Did you have a thought there, René? Okay, good.
Yep.
Okay, here we go. And so now Laban called, in verse 48, and Laban said, "This heap is a witness between you and me this day. Therefore, it is named Gilead. And Mitzvah, for he said, may the Lord watch between you and me when we are absent from one another." Now, this I'm not sure if I'm saying it exactly right, but Mitzvah is a watchtower, right? Mm-hmm. It's used as this picture that, okay, God is going to, it's almost like a verb. God is going to mitzvah between you and he's going to watch out. Is that kind of what you're seeing? You had some cool things about it.
I looked up mitzvah because if we read Israel's history later on, and I realize we're only in Genesis, but like when you get to mitzvah later on, there's lots of mitzvahs amongst the tribes of Israel, and so these are actually different places where there's watchtowers, there's different places, and even this specific one is called Ramoth Gilead later on. And so when that one is actually a city of refuge for those who accidentally kill somebody, like what we would call manslaughter today.
Right.
And so this is a place of God watching over each of the tribes, or watching over and dealing fairly between them.
Yeah. And so that whole picture is, it's really a symbol, but I think they took it more than a symbol. It's a symbol, but it has some teeth to it, that God is watching between you and me about this boundary. And so I think it's kind of a cool thing to use, and I think they honored it actually. If you mistreat my daughters, or if you take wives besides my daughters, although no man is with us, see, God is the witness between you and me. And so he's basically giving the father-in-law a talk. Make sure if you hurt my daughters, God's gonna get you, and I'll probably show up too. It's kind of what it sounds like to me. But it's almost like, we would use it as a handshake. This is my word, but it's more than a handshake, because I don't know that we imply that God's watching, but we do imply that this handshake, my word, means something.
Right.
Well, that's what these mean, right? The idea
for sure,
of
exactly.
like that. There's handshakes, and then there's like when you
wedding
stand in
ring.
front of people and make this commitment and say, "No, God is watching over this."
Well,
marriage.
that actually, that's not bad for a mitzvah. God is watching between us, and we're going to remain committed to the one that we made a promise to. That's really good.
And I would say also is not everyone would see a handshake where these piles of rocks. I think the community probably saw.
That's true. It's there
and they
for
would say,
a
"What are
long
these?
time.
Yeah, what are these rocks about?" Well, that's because Laban and Jacob, they have a covenant with each other now, and it's almost like the whole community is in on it too.
Yeah,
and coming
that's
back
really
to that
good.
idea of Ebenezer, that's what Joshua commands Israel later on, and say when they cross the Jordan, and they say, whenever you see these stones, they make another pile, and he says, you're going to tell them the story of this.
That's
And
right.
So that's
So
like a
for your-
cultural thing almost.
Yeah, right. So you come across, hey, Dad, what's this pile of stones? Well, let me tell you, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
So it's something really physical, and it's to be remembered. And just so we know, and just geographically, if people want to try to get where this is at, this would be on the other side of the Jordan. So this would be
Eastern.
The eastern side. And that day it's Edom. Today it's the country of Jordan. Just right below Syria. So halfway between the Sea of Galilee and the Dead Sea, kind of right east of there is kind of where this area is, this mitzvah is set up, which makes sense because that would be the boundary lands from where Laban was from. And also they would be the boundary lands at that time of where Jacob is going and back to Israel. So it's kind of interesting little spot there. And then I think we're down to verse 50. If you mistreat my daughters, or if you take wives besides my daughters, although no man is with us, see, God is a witness between you and me. And Laban said to Jacob, behold, this heap, and behold, the pillar which I have set between you and me. This heap is a witness, and a pillar is a witness, that I will not pass by this heap to you for harm, and you will not pass by this heap and this pillar to me for harm. So there's another level of this. I'm not going to come and mess with you and your family and take your stuff, and you're not going to come
Mess with mine again.
Exactly. It's kind of like, okay, we're parting ways here, and let God be a witness between us. And these rocks remember this. Okay. Interesting kind of culture, though, isn't it? Verse 53, and God, the God of Abraham, the God of Nahor, and the God of their father, judge between us. So Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac. So this is a little bit interesting paragraph because there's a lot going on here. So Laban said, the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor and the God of their father judge between us. And so you had a little bit of insight on this, Austin. Tell us kind of what you found on these guys.
I did some digging in commentary, and so if you go to Joshua chapter 24, so right at the end, it says, Joshua gathered all the tribes of Israel at Shechem, which is soon to be later on in Genesis. We're trying to find out where that's at. And some of the elders, the heads, the judges, and the officers of Israel. And they presented themselves before God. And Joshua said to all the people, thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, long ago your fathers lived beyond the Euphrates, Terah, the father of Abraham and Nahor, and they served other
So
gods.
Abraham and Nahor brothers.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Laban is the grandson of Nahor.
Okay, so we've been listening, hearing people talk about the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and God of Jacob. Now, Laban wasn't willing to say that God,
phrase.
but you were saying that he actually used the word. It was
Lord.
Yahweh.
He's
it was
using
Lord.
the word when he says right here in 53. He's using the word Yahweh.
Yeah, Yahweh.
Not for the God of Nahor and the God of Abraham.
So he's recognizing
There
a
is
God,
something.
not a
Not
little
an idol.
figurine God that he was looking for in Rachel's tent or whatever it was, right?
And so, but it
Or
kind of
Leah's.
shows the what we would call syncretism of where they're blending whatever the Chaldean religion
Yeah.
would be. But he's also saying, well, I'm going to pull in this Yahweh guy because obviously he's spoken to him in a dream. Obviously, I know about him from my dad and my grandfather.
Right.
So we know this other God is out there, but
Right.
he's not really committed.
Still hanging on to the past gods. That's what he knows, and yet he's acknowledging there is which is a lot of people like that even today. I mean, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, isn't that what some of us do? I mean, we know Yahweh God, but then we have other gods that were,
Yeah.
just anything that we try to put up there equal with God.
Yeah,
And you were even saying at the beginning, this is kind of explaining like why he's like, Abraham, you need to head out of town.
No, I think that's exactly right. He's like, listen, this is your family, and your family has these other gods, and you're going to have to part from there and do something completely different. And because you guys, it's very obvious that Laban is not willing to part with all of his gods.
And do you think that that's why God also told Jacob to leave Laban?
Could eventually.
I mean,
yeah.
it's just because there was that influence, and
sure.
and we see this ego of Laban going, well, here Jacob had worked all his life,
Yeah.
and God had blessed him, and Laban is still trying to take credit for it and
Yeah.
still trying to control it. And so, as I read through that, I thought, I think God is also protecting Jacob by having him leave Laban, and even though that means the two daughters, his two wives, aren't going to be with their dad and their family. This is again preservation of.
Well, yeah, because Laban would be influencing the grandkids generation for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
no,
I
that's-
kind of wondered when I was reading through this.
Yeah. It's hard to let go of gods, you just even like the Kansas City Chiefs.
I know.
He brings in this God of this small G God, into this land. He just can't let it go.
He can't let it go.
I don't know. It's like
he can't let it go.
We're gonna have to set up a mitzvah watchtower.
That's right.
No Chiefs beyond this point.
There you go. Okay. Or your people aren't going to come harm our people. Yeah, exactly. I think this year I don't think we have a chance. So we're not
gonna
going
be tough.
not going to be much harm. Anyway, that's kind of an aside. So then Jacob offered a sacrifice on the mountain and called his kinsmen to the meal, and they ate the meal and they spent the night on the mountain. And early in the morning, Laban arose and he kissed his sons and his daughters and blessed them. And Laban departed and returned to his place. So, I guess I see a man of his word. He says, all right, this is going to be our watchtower. This pillar is going to stand between you and me. And he's honoring it. He gets
Yeah.
up in the next morning and goes his way. Any final thoughts on closing chapter 31? A lot of happened here.
I don't have any others. It's just ideal. Like when me coming here, right? So like thinking of, oh, well, we're going to deal fairly and leave rightly. He's doing that. And even though he's never, unless they come back to that thing, he's never going to see his daughters and his grandchildren again. But it almost seems like a shift in his point of view. Yes, we've had this covenant,
Yep.
and now it's no longer but it's almost like he's recognizing, no, I got to let this happen because this is what God had told him in the dream.
I think that's what struck me about this whole thing, that, whether this pillar or this watchtower or all that, but they gave that meaning and allowed that to mean something at that time. And I kind of, I think you're right. It's like the wedding ring. It's a visible symbol, but it means something. It's more than just
if you hurt somebody with back in the day, when vigilante justice reigned, but if you hurt somebody with a wedding ring, that you knew that somebody else might be coming after you because you're harming somebody that's in a covenant.
Oh yeah,
To that degree. So if
sure.
a wife has been hurt or murdered or something like that, there's going to be a husband coming after you.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah,
So,
no, that's
And I'd like to add just that there seems to be closure because earlier in the chapter, remember when Jacob goes to Leah and Rachel and says, hey, I think it's time to leave. And they're like, yeah, we're ready to go. My dad has treated us unfairly.
Yeah.
But then here at the last, they get a blessing from their dad. So it's almost like
that is true closure.
it's closure for them.
For sure.
They can reconcile the relationship with their dad and they
that's
can
good.
now move with Jacob. And so it's really cool that Laban did that because he could have just said, see you later.
Yeah.
But he's willing to bless them. And I just
huge.
Somehow there was a heart change in Laban. I mean, maybe not fully because he's, we see that he doesn't have the fearsome God of his father Isaac. However, there's something in him that's had a heart shift.
For sure.
Yeah.
And it's such a blessing to his girls.
Yeah.
And really a blessing to Jacob because if there would have been contention for them. That's a great insight. Well, there you go. We have just landed the plane here in Genesis chapter 31. And the next one, guys, this Genesis 32, this is the wrestling match. This is
I love
fun
this.
stuff's coming up. So thanks for tuning in and God bless you all.